Welcome to XRP Focus. I hope you're all doing well and having a great day. Before we begin, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss important XRP updates. Your support truly helps this channel continue delivering clear and honest insights. Something has changed in the XRP ecosystem, and longtime holders are starting to realize that the original timeline many people believed in may no longer apply. Over the past few weeks, a series of developments have quietly aligned, creating a compressed and accelerated path forward for XRP. What once looked like a slow, multi-year process is now beginning to unfold in stages that are far closer together than expected. This is why analysts, traders, and institutions are suddenly paying much closer attention. The timeline is no longer distant, it's tightening, and every step matters more than ever. At the center of this shift is Ripple's evolving strategy. After years of legal uncertainty, cautious expansion, and limited public guidance, Ripple's actions now suggest a move toward execution rather than preparation. On-chain data, escrow behavior, partnership confirmations, and infrastructure upgrades all point to a synchronized plan. Instead of waiting for perfect market conditions, Ripple appears to be positioning XRP to function at scale regardless of short-term volatility. For holders, this signals that the project may be entering a phase where milestones arrive faster and with greater impact. One of the clearest indicators of this accelerated timeline is how events are overlapping instead of spacing out. Escrow releases, XRPL upgrades, institutional developments, and ecosystem announcements are no longer isolated. They are happening in close proximity, creating compound effects on sentiment and price behavior. In previous years, XRP often moved after the fact, reacting late to broader market cycles. Now it appears to be moving in anticipation, positioning itself ahead of expected demand rather than chasing it. This subtle shift in behavior is why experienced observers are reevaluating their expectations. Another critical signal comes from how institutions are behaving. Large players do not rush capital into assets without visibility. The growing interest in XRP-linked products, structured exposure, and liquidity pathways suggests that key timelines are already known behind the scenes. Institutions tend to move early, quietly, and methodically. When retail investors notice increased activity, it often means the groundwork has already been laid. This creates a scenario where the visible timeline lags behind the real one, catching many holders off guard when momentum accelerates faster than expected. Market psychology is also changing. Instead of asking whether XRP will be relevant, the conversation has shifted toward when specific thresholds will be crossed. Discussions now focus on adoption phases, liquidity expansion, and network readiness rather than survival or legal outcomes. This change in narrative is not accidental. Narratives shift only when enough underlying conditions support them. The result is a compressed expectation window, where developments that once seemed far away now feel imminent. Technical behavior supports this idea. XRP has been forming long-term structures that suggest preparation rather than exhaustion. Periods of consolidation are no longer seen as weakness but as staging zones. Volatility spikes are followed by tighter ranges, indicating absorption rather than distribution. This kind of price behavior often appears before significant timeline acceleration, especially when paired with fundamental alignment. Traders watching closely understand that markets tend to move suddenly after long periods of apparent inactivity. Perhaps the most important element of this new timeline is that it is no longer driven by speculation alone. Real-world use cases, infrastructure readiness, and regulatory clarity are converging. When timelines are speculative, delays are common. When timelines are operational, delays become costly. Ripple's recent moves suggest an operational mindset, where systems are expected to function under real demand. That shift alone dramatically changes how quickly events can unfold. For XRP holders, this creates both opportunity and risk. Opportunity comes from being positioned before broader awareness catches up. Risk comes from underestimating how fast conditions can change once momentum begins. In accelerated timelines, hesitation often costs more than patience ever did. This is why so many experienced voices are urging close attention now, not later. The window for quiet positioning tends to close quickly once clarity becomes obvious. This new XRP timeline is not about a single date or announcement. It's about sequence, one event unlocking the next, each reducing friction for the one that follows. When timelines compress, the distance between cause and effect shrinks. That is exactly what appears to be happening now. And for those watching closely, the signs are becoming harder to ignore. The sudden compression of XRP's timeline did not happen by accident. It is the result of several long-developing forces finally aligning at the same moment. For years, progress moved cautiously, often slowed by regulatory uncertainty, market skepticism, and fragmented infrastructure. Now those barriers are either weakening or disappearing entirely. When resistance fades, momentum does not increase gradually, it accelerates sharply. This is the phase XRP appears to be entering, and understanding why it is happening now is critical. One of the most important drivers is regulatory clarity. Once uncertainty is removed, institutions no longer need to wait on the sidelines. Capital that was previously paused can begin moving with confidence. This alone can compress timelines dramatically because institutional capital operates on preparation, not reaction. The planning phase often takes years, but execution happens quickly once approval is implicit. For XRP, this means that adoption steps once expected to unfold slowly may now arrive in rapid succession, catching retail investors off guard. Infrastructure readiness is another key factor. The XRP ledger is no longer in an experimental phase. It is stable, scalable, and capable of handling high-volume transactions efficiently. Financial systems do not integrate with technology that is still theoretical. They integrate when performance is proven and predictable. The recent focus on upgrades, interoperability, and expanded functionality suggests that Ripple is ensuring the network can handle real demand, not hypothetical use. Once infrastructure reaches this stage, timelines naturally compress because the remaining steps are operational, not developmental. Escrow behavior also tells an important story. XRP's escrow system has always been transparent, but recent patterns suggest strategic flexibility rather than routine scheduling. When escrow behavior aligns with broader ecosystem signals, it often indicates preparation for liquidity needs. Liquidity is not prepared for speculation, it is prepared for usage. That distinction matters. Usage-driven liquidity implies a timeline based on function, not hype. This further supports the idea that Ripple is anticipating activity rather than reacting to it. Another accelerating force is global payment pressure. Traditional financial systems are facing increasing demand for faster, cheaper, and more reliable settlement solutions. Delays that were once tolerated are no longer acceptable in a world moving toward real-time finance. XRP was designed for exactly this problem. As pressure increases, solutions that already exist gain priority over those still in development. This naturally pulls XRP's relevance forward in time, making its role more immediate rather than future-oriented. Market structure also plays a role. XRP has spent extended periods in consolidation, frustrating traders who expected rapid gains. However, long consolidations often indicate accumulation rather than abandonment. Large players accumulate quietly to avoid moving the market prematurely. Once accumulation reaches a threshold, the timeline shifts from preparation to execution. This is when price behavior changes quickly, often before clear news reaches the public. The market does not wait for headlines. It moves when positioning is complete. Psychology is shifting as well. The community is no longer debating whether XRP will survive or regain relevance. The conversation has moved towards sequence and timing, which development comes first, and how quickly the next one follows. This change in mindset reflects growing confidence that movement is inevitable. When belief transitions from possibility to expectation, timelines compress because fewer participants hesitate. This creates feedback loops where anticipation fuels positioning, which then accelerates momentum. Another often overlooked factor is geopolitical financial realignment. Cross-border liquidity, currency bridging, and settlement neutrality are becoming strategic concerns, not just technical ones. Assets that can function without reliance on a single national system gain importance quickly during periods of global uncertainty. XRP's design places it directly in this category. When financial priorities shift at a global level, timelines that once seemed long can collapse into much shorter windows. What makes this phase particularly dangerous for unprepared holders is that acceleration is rarely linear. Nothing happens for a long time, then multiple things happen very quickly. Those waiting for obvious confirmation often arrive late. Those watching structure, behavior, and alignment tend to position earlier. XRP's current environment shows signs of alignment across regulation, infrastructure, liquidity, and narrative. That combination is rare, and when it appears, it usually precedes rapid change. This is why many experienced observers believe the XRP timeline has entered a new phase, not because of hype, but because delay no longer benefits the system. Once execution becomes the priority, speed follows naturally, and when speed increases, expectations must adjust accordingly. As the XRP timeline accelerates, the sequence in which key events unfold is critical. Each step builds upon the last, creating a domino effect that can reshape adoption, liquidity, and market perception almost overnight. For holders and traders, understanding this sequence is essential because missing the first moves can result in being out of sync with the market. The urgency is real. Ripple is no longer operating on speculative timing. Its strategy appears deliberate, and the pace of execution is increasing. The first event likely to create visible momentum is liquidity movement from escrow releases. Historically, escrow unlocks have influenced both market supply and investor psychology. When tokens are distributed strategically, it signals confidence and readiness rather than desperation. Market watchers are noticing subtle changes in wallet activity and transfer patterns that suggest preparation for increased demand rather than typical routine releases. Even minor deviations from expected patterns can provide clues that the timeline is moving faster than previously assumed. Following escrow movement, XRPL technical upgrades are expected to accelerate adoption. These upgrades include smart contract functionality, decentralized finance integration, and enhanced interoperability. Each of these improvements expands the utility of XRP beyond cross-border payments, transforming it into a multi-use network capable of supporting financial products, yield generation, and institutional activity. Traders are watching this closely because functional improvements often create compound effects on both liquidity and price, especially when combined with anticipation from the community and institutions. Strategic partnerships with banks, fintech firms, and payment providers form the next step in the timeline. These collaborations serve as practical validation of XRP's real-world application. When adoption moves from theoretical potential to measurable network activity, confidence increases across the board. Analysts note that the combination of technical upgrades, escrow flexibility, and institutional partnerships is rarely coincidental. Ripple appears to be orchestrating a sequence where each success reinforces the next, compressing what once may have been a multi-year rollout into a matter of months. Institutional involvement amplifies the timeline even further. Spot ETFs, private investment flows, and fund allocations are creating hidden momentum that is not immediately visible to retail investors. Large investors tend to act early and quietly, preparing the market for larger, more visible movements later. When retail participants notice activity, the public perception often accelerates, creating a surge in demand that compounds the initial positioning. Observers note that these flows often precede price spikes, making awareness of institutional behavior crucial for those trying to align with the accelerated timeline. Regulatory clarity remains a significant driver in this sequence. The legal landscape for XRP has stabilized, removing a major historical barrier to adoption. Without regulatory uncertainty, institutions and developers can move quickly, accelerating project timelines that once depended on cautious observation. When compliance risks are minimal, adoption no longer waits. It executes immediately, further compressing the expected timeline for network growth and price movement. Community sentiment also plays a critical role in reinforcing the timeline. Positive narratives, discussion of adoption metrics, and speculation about technological updates all create a feedback loop. When holders and traders believe events are imminent, accumulation often accelerates, which in turn supports liquidity and price momentum. Unlike in speculative cycles, this sentiment is grounded in tangible progress, meaning that the timeline is reinforced by both perception and reality. Technical patterns in XRP's price behavior support the idea that acceleration is underway. Long periods of consolidation, sometimes mistaken for stagnation, indicate absorption rather than distribution. Large players accumulate during these periods, setting the stage for sudden synchronized moves once milestones are reached. This combination of hidden positioning and visible catalysts makes the unfolding timeline even more significant for holders watching closely. The key takeaway is that the XRP timeline is no longer theoretical or distant. Escrow releases, XRPL upgrades, institutional inflows, partnerships, and regulatory clarity are aligning sequentially, producing rapid movement. Every event triggers the next, shrinking the distance between cause and effect. The market's reaction may appear sudden to those observing from the outside, but for those following the sequence, the acceleration is logical and predictable. For XRP holders, this new sequence presents a rare opportunity, but also a warning. Missing early signals could result in being out of sync with rapid developments, while understanding the order of events allows for strategic positioning. Those paying attention now can act with foresight rather than reaction, aligning with Ripple's accelerated timeline and potentially benefiting from the compound effects of overlapping catalysts. The acceleration of XRP's timeline is more than just a theoretical observation. It has direct implications for holders, traders, and anyone invested in the network. When events that were once expected to unfold gradually now happen in rapid succession, opportunities for positioning expand, but so do the risks for those who hesitate. Understanding the consequences of this shift is crucial for anyone seeking to navigate XRP's current environment strategically. First, accelerated timelines increase the impact of each event. Escrow releases that once had predictable effects now interact with faster-moving technical upgrades, community announcements, and institutional activity. The result is a market where the influence of a single milestone is amplified because it triggers a chain reaction. For example, a strategic escrow release could coincide with the launch of XRPL smart contract functionality, creating compound interest in liquidity, adoption, and sentiment simultaneously. Traders who fail to anticipate this sequence may miss the initial movement, while informed holders can position themselves advantageously. Second, rapid sequencing can create heightened volatility. When multiple catalysts overlap, price swings are more extreme, and short-term market behavior becomes harder to predict. This is not a sign of instability, but rather of acceleration. Markets respond faster when milestones are tightly aligned. Experienced traders understand that volatility in compressed timelines is often temporary and can precede larger trends in adoption and network growth. For holders, the key takeaway is to stay informed and maintain visibility on both on-chain data and broader market signals, because timing matters more than ever. Institutional adoption also magnifies the effects of the compressed timeline. Hedge funds, asset managers, and other large investors tend to move strategically and quietly. When these actors begin deploying capital in alignment with network upgrades and escrow events, retail observers may notice price movement only after it has already begun. The compressed timeline means that market shifts can happen quickly, and the window to enter positions with foresight may be narrower than in previous cycles. Monitoring institutional signals, ETF flows, and liquidity changes is critical for anticipating these moves. Regulatory clarity further accelerates adoption and execution. With the SEC settlement behind them, Ripple and other participants can operate with confidence, moving forward without fear of legal roadblocks. This regulatory stability reduces delays and allows the network to execute on milestones that previously would have been deferred. The result is a timeline that now reflects actual operational capacity rather than hypothetical targets, compressing expectations and changing the perception of when milestones will be reached. Community behavior also influences the outcome. As awareness of the accelerated timeline spreads, accumulation patterns change. Holders who understand the implications of overlapping events tend to position themselves early, which increases liquidity, reduces the probability of panic selling, and reinforces upward momentum. Social discussion, forums, and analysis channels reflect this shift as focus moves from speculation to anticipation, sequence, and timing. Market psychology and network fundamentals now interact more directly, creating an environment where informed holders gain a distinct advantage. Technical trends in XRP's price action support the notion of acceleration. Consolidation zones, historically mistaken for stagnation, are now seen as preparatory stages for rapid movement. Absorption during these phases indicates accumulation, and once triggers like escrow releases, upgrades, or institutional inflows occur, price movement tends to be both faster and more substantial. Observers note that this type of structure often precedes short bursts of volatility followed by sustained adoption, reinforcing the compressed timeline effect. Finally, the broader takeaway is that XRP is entering a high-velocity phase of adoption and development. Events are no longer spread out over months or years. They are occurring in succession, creating a momentum that compounds with each milestone. For holders, this is both an opportunity and a challenge. Acting early, staying informed, and understanding the sequence of events can provide advantages that were not available in slower, more predictable cycles. Failing to observe the acceleration could result in missed opportunities or reactive decisions that fail to capture the benefits of rapid developments. In conclusion, the shocking new XRP timeline signals a shift from slow, predictable progress to rapid, high-impact execution. Escrow releases, technical upgrades, institutional adoption, regulatory clarity, and community alignment are now converging, compressing the timeline and increasing the importance of informed observation. The coming weeks and months are likely to define XRP's trajectory, both in terms of price and adoption, and holders who monitor developments closely will be best positioned to respond strategically. Understanding the accelerated sequence, anticipating events, and evaluating network signals are now more critical than ever for anyone involved in XRP. This is not a time to wait, it is a time to watch, analyze, and act with precision as the future of the network unfolds at an unprecedented pace. Welcome to XRP Focus. I hope you're all doing well and having a great day. Before we begin, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss important XRP updates. Your support truly helps this channel continue delivering clear and honest insights.